The Tholian ambassador's telepathic mind blast slammed into the council, with footage of humans committing brutal war crimes from history, sending representatives reeling into psychic agony. "So this is a human warship," Vola shrieked, his psychic voice ringing through the chambers. "Observe the bloodthirsty primates and their advanced weapons of mass destruction." 12 of the most powerful species in the galaxy, meeting as the Galactic Council, were stunned into silence. They watched with growing dread as humanity, a newly spacefaring civilization, launched their flagship vessel, the Prometheus. The sleek dreadnought was laden with railguns, nuclear missiles, and powered by antimatter. Their entire history is defined by conflict, Vola continued his mental tirade, sending images of battles like the Somme, Stalingrad, and Iwo Jima into the Council's minds. To achieve star travel with such sophistication, yet still glorify warfare, it's abominable. We must contain this threat. "Caution, Vola," clicked the Mantis Queen. "You suggest we interfere with a Class 5 civilization's progress? Our highest law forbids this. We observe and invite. Perhaps humanity can be mentored toward peace." The psychic chatter grew heated until a glowing orb materialized above the council. "Silence. I, the Eternal Judge, have made my decision. We will send ambassadors to Earth, learn their intentions, but if they prove hostile, we must protect our galactic peace, by any means necessary." Captain Lawrence Griffin stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, staring out the viewport at Neptune's blue glow. His shaking hand gripped the locket holding his deceased lover's picture. Her loss in the Martian conflict still haunted him, but he'd be damned if he let more soldiers die on his watch. "All hands prepare for quantum leap. We're making history today, humanity's first jump to Alpha Centauri. Hold on to your butts and pray this reactor works." The Prometheus vanished in a blaze of light, unaware that the eyes of the galaxy were upon them, judging, fearing the worst. The survival of the human race would depend on the outcome of this first contact. The die had been cast. As the Prometheus slipped through the void, light years from Earth, Vola's psychic senses tingled with apprehension. In his cloaked ship, he observed the human vessel, a growing sense of unease settling in his mind. Something was amiss aboard the Prometheus, a dark presence that seemed to emanate from the ship's very core. Focusing his telepathic abilities, Vola probed the ship's interior, his mind's eye drawn to the cargo hold. There, hidden among the supplies and equipment, lay an artifact of unknown origin, pulsating with an eerie, malevolent energy. The orb, secretly loaded onto the ship by a covert government agency, had begun to exert its influence on the crew, slowly corrupting their minds and the ship's systems. Captain Griffin, already haunted by the ghosts of his past, found himself plagued by vivid nightmares and hallucinations. The horrors of the Martian conflict played out in his mind, the faces of fallen comrades and his lost love tormenting him in his waking hours. As he struggled to maintain his grip on reality, the crew of the Prometheus began to unravel. Paranoia and erratic behavior spread through the ship like a virus. As the artifact's influence grew stronger, crew members turned on one another, suspicion and fear replacing the camaraderie that had once bound them together. Griffin, desperate to maintain order and uncover the source of the disturbances, found himself at odds with his own crew. In the depths of the ship, Dr. Marcus Raven, the chief engineer, had become obsessed with the artifact. He spent long hours in the cargo hold, studying the orb in secret, convinced that it held the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. Griffin, suspicious of Raven's behavior, confronted the engineer, demanding answers. "You don't understand, Captain," Raven said, his eyes gleaming with a manic light. "This artifact, it's more than just a relic. It's alive, and it's trying to communicate with us. If we can just decipher its language, imagine the knowledge we could gain." Griffin shook his head, his voice low and threatening. "I don't care what secrets you think it holds, Doctor. That thing is dangerous, and it's tearing my crew apart. I want it off my ship now." As the two men argued, the tension aboard the Prometheus reached a breaking point. The artifact's influence had spread to every corner of the ship, and the crew was on the brink of mutiny. Griffin knew he had to act fast before the situation spiraled out of control. Meanwhile, aboard the cloaked Tholian ship, Vola and his fellow envoys debated their course of action. They had been sent to observe the humans, to assess their intentions, and determine whether they posed a threat to the galactic peace. But now, faced with the growing crisis aboard the Prometheus, they were uncertain of how to proceed. "We cannot interfere," one of the envoys argued. "The humans must be allowed to face this challenge on their own. It is the only way they will learn and grow." "But at what cost?" Vola countered, his mind still reeling from the dark energy he had sensed aboard the Prometheus. "If we do nothing, the humans may destroy themselves, and who knows what damage that artifact could unleash upon the galaxy." As the debate raged on, the Prometheus continued its journey through the stars, its crew unaware of the hidden dangers that lurked within their own ship. The fate of the mission, and perhaps the fate of humanity itself, hung in the balance, as the artifact's power grew stronger with each passing moment. As the chaos aboard the Prometheus reached a fever pitch, Vola made a decision. The Tholian envoy could no longer stand idly by, watching the humans struggle against an enemy they didn't understand. Vola assembled a team of elite Tholian operatives, each one trained in the art of infiltration and combat. They would board the Prometheus, under the guise of offering assistance to the beleaguered crew. Captain Griffin, his eyes bloodshot and his nerves frayed, watched as the Tholian shuttle docked with the Prometheus. He didn't trust the aliens, but he knew he needed all the help he could get. As Vola and his team emerged from the airlock, Griffin greeted them with a curt nod. "Welcome aboard the Prometheus," he said, his voice strained. "I hope you're here to help, because we're in over our heads." Vola, his crystalline exoskeleton glinting in the harsh light of the ship's corridors, nodded in return. "We are here to assist, Captain. Our sensors detected an anomalous energy signature aboard your vessel. We believe it may be the source of your troubles." Griffin's eyes narrowed. "The artifact," he muttered. "Dr. Raven's been studying it in secret. I knew there was something off about that thing." As the group made their way through the ship's labyrinthine corridors, they began to encounter resistance. Crew members, their eyes glazed and their movements jerky, attacked them with a ferocity that belied their human frailty. Vola and his team, their weapons at the ready, fought back, stunning the augmented humans with precision strikes. "What's happening to them?" Griffin asked, his voice tinged with horror as he watched his crew fall one by one. "The artifact," Vola replied, his telepathic voice echoing in Griffin's mind. "It's corrupting them, transforming them into something other." As they delved deeper into the ship, the true extent of the artifact's influence became clear. The walls pulsed with a sickly, organic light, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. Griffin, his hand trembling as he gripped his sidearm, couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into the maw of some great slumbering beast. And then they saw him. Dr. Raven, or what was left of him, stood before them, his body a twisted amalgam of flesh and metal. His eyes, once bright with the spark of scientific curiosity, now glowed with a malevolent red light. "You're too late," he rasped, his voice a grating mechanical whisper. "The artifact and I are one. Soon we will spread our influence across the stars, and all will kneel before us." Griffin, his heart pounding in his chest, raised his weapon. "Stand down, Dr. Raven, it's over." But Raven only laughed, a sound that sent chills down Griffin's spine. "You think you can stop me, Captain? You're nothing more than an insect, a speck of dust in the grand scheme of things. The artifact has shown me the truth, and I will not be denied my destiny." Vola stepped forward, his crystalline eyes narrowing. "The artifact is not what you think it is, Dr. Raven. It's a sentient being, a malevolent entity that seeks to consume all life in the galaxy. You're just a pawn in its game." Raven snarled, his mechanical limbs twitching with barely contained rage. "You dare to lecture me, alien? I have seen the truth, and I will not be swayed by your lies. The Prometheus is mine, and I will use it to spread the artifact's influence across the stars." As Raven lunged forward, his mechanical limbs flailing, Griffin and Volar sprang into action. They fought their way through the twisted corridors of the Prometheus, battling Raven's augmented crew members and their own inner demons. Griffin, his mind reeling from the horrors he had witnessed, couldn't shake the feeling that they were fighting a losing battle. And then they reached the reactor core, where Raven had begun to merge with the artifact and the ship's systems. The room pulsed with an eerie, malevolent energy, and Griffin could feel the weight of the artifact's presence pressing down on him like a physical force. "You cannot stop me," Raven crowed, his voice a distorted mechanical screech. "I am the Prometheus, and the Prometheus is me. Together we will consume the galaxy, and all will tremble before our might." Griffin, his heart pounding in his ears, knew that he had only one choice. He had to destroy the Prometheus and the artifact along with it. But doing so would mean sacrificing himself and the crew he had sworn to protect. As the reactor began to overload and the ship started to tear itself apart, Griffin and Volar fought their way through the collapsing corridors, racing against time to escape the doomed vessel. Explosions rocked the ship, and the walls buckled and twisted as the artifact's influence spread like a cancer. In a burst of searing heat and blinding light, the Prometheus exploded, the shockwave slamming into Griffin and Volar's tiny escape shuttle. Alarms blared as the craft tumbled end over end, its stabilizers and navigation systems fried by the blast. Griffin clung to the controls, his knuckles white as he struggled to right the crippled vessel. Beside him, Volar's crystalline form pulsed with an eerie blue light, his telepathic abilities reaching out to steady Griffin's mind amidst the chaos. As the shuttle finally stabilized, the two survivors stared out the viewport at the remains of the Prometheus, now nothing more than a field of glittering debris against the starry backdrop of space. A heavy silence hung between them, broken only by the soft hum of the shuttle's life support systems and the occasional crackle of damaged circuitry. Days turned into weeks as Griffin and Volar worked tirelessly to repair the shuttle's systems, their supplies dwindling with each passing hour. Griffin, his mind haunted by the faces of his lost crew and the weight of his decision to destroy the ship, retreated into himself, his once vibrant eyes now dull and lifeless. He barely ate or slept, his body running on fumes and sheer force of will. Volar, sensing the depths of Griffin's despair, reached out with his telepathic abilities, offering what comfort he could. In the quiet moments between repairs, he shared stories of his own people, their triumphs and tragedies, and the lessons they had learned through countless centuries of existence. Slowly, Griffin began to open up, his grief and guilt giving way to a newfound sense of purpose. As the two worked side by side, a bond began to form between them, transcending the barriers of species and culture. They shared meals, swapped stories, and found solace in each other's company. For the first time since the loss of his crew, Griffin began to feel a glimmer of hope, a sense that perhaps there was still a future worth fighting for. But their fragile peace was shattered when the shuttle's comm system crackled to life, a distress call echoing through the cramped confines of the craft. A human colony, located on a nearby planet, was under attack by an unknown alien force. The colonists' defenses were failing, and they begged for aid from any ship in range. Griffin and Volar exchanged a long, wordless look, the weight of their shared history hanging heavy between them. They knew the risks of getting involved, the danger of drawing attention to themselves and their fragile vessel. But they also knew they couldn't turn their backs on innocent lives in need. As they approached the colony, however, their worst fears were realized. The attackers were not aliens but humans, their bodies twisted and deformed by the same malevolent energy that had corrupted the Prometheus. They moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, their eyes glowing with the same eerie red light that had once shone from Dr. Raven's augmented form. Griffin's heart sank as he realized the true extent of the artifact's power. It had survived the destruction of the Prometheus, and now it was spreading its influence across the galaxy, turning humans into monstrous, biomechanical creatures. The colony's defenses were crumbling, its inhabitants facing certain death at the hands of their own kind. With their shuttle barely functional and their resources stretched to the breaking point, Griffin and Volar faced an impossible choice. They could risk everything to save the colony, throwing themselves into a battle they had little chance of winning. Or they could turn away, continue their journey, and warn the rest of the galaxy of the artifact's terrifying power. Time was running out, and the fate of the colony hung in the balance. Griffin and Vola had to make a decision, and they had to make it now. The weight of the galaxy's future rested on their shoulders, and the wrong choice could spell doom for all of humanity. Griffin and Vola exchanged a heavy look, the weight of their decision settling upon them like a shroud. They knew the risks, the odds stacked against them, but they couldn't turn their backs on the colony, not when innocent lives hung in the balance. As they approached the settlement, the true horror of the artifact's influence became apparent. The once human attackers, their bodies a grotesque fusion of flesh and metal, moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, their eyes glowing with a malevolent red light. They tore through the colony's defenses like a hot knife through butter, leaving a trail of destruction and death in their wake. Griffin's hands shook as he gripped the shuttle's controls, his mind reeling from the sight of the transformed humans. Beside him, Vola's crystalline form pulsed with a steady, calming light, his telepathic presence a soothing balm to Griffin's frayed nerves. "We have to draw them away from the colonists," Griffin said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Give them a chance to evacuate." Vola nodded, his faceted eyes fixed on the carnage below. "I'll man the weapons, you focus on flying." Together they dove into the fray, the shuttle's limited arsenal no match for the creature's raw power and speed. But Griffin and Vola were resourceful, using their wits and their intimate knowledge of the shuttle's systems to stay one step ahead of their pursuers. They wove through the colony's towering structures, drawing the creatures away from the fleeing colonists. Explosions rocked the shuttle as the monsters unleashed their fury, but Griffin held the craft steady, his jaw clenched with determination. As the last of the survivors boarded their escape vessels, Griffin and Vola knew their time was running out. The creatures were closing in, their numbers growing with each passing moment. "We need to end this," Griffin said, his voice heavy with the weight of what he was suggesting. Vola met his gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. They had one final card to play, one last desperate gambit. They lured the creatures into a nearby asteroid field, the shuttle's engines straining as they pushed deeper into the treacherous terrain. The monsters followed, their single-minded pursuit blinding them to the danger that lay ahead. And then, with a final desperate prayer, Griffin and Vola detonated the shuttle's reactor, the explosion consuming them and the creatures in a blinding flash of light. The asteroids shattered, the debris mingling with the twisted remnants of the shuttle and the monsters that had pursued them. But even as the dust settled, a single tiny fragment of the artifact survived, drifting through the void of space, its malevolent presence undiminished. It would be years before the galaxy learned of Griffin and Vola's sacrifice, before their names were etched into the annals of history as heroes who had given their lives to save countless others. And it would be years still before that tiny fragment found its way into the hands of an unsuspecting freighter crew, drawn to its strange, pulsating energy. As they examined their find, the artifact's insidious cycle began anew, its influence once again threatening to consume all in its path. The Galactic Council, now fully aware of the artifact's existence and the role played by the Prometheus in its containment, found themselves grappling with the consequences of their inaction. They had watched and waited, debating and deliberating, while the artifact's power had grown unchecked. And now, as they sat in their chambers, the weight of their decisions hanging heavy in the air, they knew that the greatest threat to the galaxy might not come from without, but from within. The artifact's influence was spreading, its tendrils reaching out to corrupt and consume, and the Council knew that they would need to act quickly if they hoped to stem the tide. But even as they debated their next course of action, the artifact's power continued to grow, setting the stage for a future conflict that would test the very foundations of galactic civilization. The sacrifices of Griffin and Vola would serve as a haunting reminder of the dangers that lurked in the depths of space, and the price that must be paid to protect the innocent from the forces of darkness. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.